Hello, ladies and gentlemen on YouTube. Today we're continuing with the summaries. As always, I wanted to also mention that I'm going to upload all videos that extend longer than 30 minutes onto Spotify, which means that probably I'm going to mute the music. Well, I'm going to mute the music and all you're going to hear is just me talking. Any of these videos are going to be on Spotify. Of course, you're going to miss out on any pictures that I reference to, and sometimes it might be tricky for me to keep that in mind. But I'm going to try to keep it in mind for the people that want to listen in on Spotify, and then maybe I'm going to be able to have this as some kind of podcast together with Spotify. Maybe they'll work together with me to put it on the league section, because that could be pretty cool. Just group days, summaries, and so forth. Nevertheless, let's just jump into the action. Team Liquid started off in the group stage with a loss. Looking at the draft, Machi X Esports, I looked at them as a team that is very, very similar to Team Liquid. I thought they were kind of Team Liquid light. A lot of the games they won weren't through some big early game wins. Usually it was just through better and more decisive macro that started at some point in the game where the mid game and late game was much more relevant. So this is a very, very precise team. Very precise team that when they get ahead, they stay ahead. Similar to Team Liquid in that fashion. And if we looked at Team Liquid versus, for example, FlyQuest, in that best of five, teams with two very similar styles, it all came down to who had time as a friend. In this particular draft, you can see Machi X Esports has instantly the time as their friend. The Ornn is going to be unbelievably powerful. The Syndra is very good to all of these long-range mages because the stun is long enough to reach them. And then you have the Ezreal for the poke, and the ability for Team Liquid to force here is going to be non-existent. This is one of those drafts where Graves is not going to scale well either because he's just too short range against the Ezreal, the Karma, and the Syndra, and the Volibear and Ornn. If they play accordingly, they're going to be able to just supply the rest of the team with just a front line. But of course, you look at Team Liquid's side, the Graves needs to find an advantage, Mordekaiser needs to find an advantage, because otherwise these champions are just going to be, better, completely better. Volibear and Ornn are just going to turn out better. So Machi X Esports, they did the Shen ban to supply the Ornn, Twisted Fate as well removed, and then of course Twitch for our dear Tactical, who had a wonderful time with, of course, the Twitch Rakan combo that they played. We have the Ornn first pick, Graves Orianna is the answer. And in a lot of cases it's not too bad, right? It's not too bad, but already Ornn is pretty decent into Graves, so you need to be very mindful of this as you continue the draft. Volibear Syndra is locked in, and right now it all comes down to the 2v2 mid. Who maneuvers the 2v2 mid better? I think the setup is easier for Volibear Syndra, and Graves Orianna requires a lot better execution. And even though Graves Orianna did well, it was against a Lucian and a Jarvan the last time we saw it, but I thought it was bold looking at this draft that they actually give up Graves. I was very unhappy when the Mordekaiser came down here because right away you put yourself on a timer. It's tricky. Let me just close the door because my dear Elena is in the kitchen. I was about to do an inappropriate joke, but yeah, let's leave it out.
Would you like a bit of salad?
I'm okay, thank you, Angel.
You don't want?
I'm recording something. Could you please close the door? Thank you. Mordekaiser gets locked in, so that instantly puts you on a timer, right? The Ornn is something that is going to, on side might have difficulties into Mordekaiser's. But when the game was less about team fights and side was more relevant, Leandri's was a point in time where it was like a break point where Mordekaiser would begin to slowly, beat Ornn. But Ornn, that's no longer relevant. Volibear had a lot of things to say in this game. Volibear got a first blood onto the Orianna, and Mission was just snowballing the hell out of the lane. After that happened, Syndra was super far ahead. Mission had a monster CS lead. Ezreal was doing well in the game, and after Volibear got the kill onto Mordred, got the kill into mid, that was enough to just put Team Liquid in the grave, because they looked like their good old self. I think the only thing that really happened in the early game was Team Liquid got a kill on bottom side, but Caitlyn Lux cracking Ezreal Karma is kind of too much to ask for. I think in terms of how these teams match up stylistically, I think what you need to watch out for YamatoCannon is just they stuck true to their style. You know, teams are trying to figure out Graves and Lilia, and when Lilia is out of the picture, it isn't as straightforward as teams want to make it out to be. Like we've seen a lot of teams struggle with Graves. We've seen a lot of teams struggle with Lilia too. And here is just them throwing a Volibear jungle in there. And the way you need to play the game and the way you want to draft is pretty straightforward. I think YamatoCannon just kind of did what they wanted to do. I don't think they had some kind of special comfort champions, because across the board, these are champions that they have played in the past, but these players have pretty decent champion pools. And I think that's something that YamatoCannon definitely have as an advantage against Team Liquid. The kill happened mid, and Mission really mid-gapped this game, and there was no recovery. Graves was just suffocated for the rest of the game, and Team Liquid couldn't find anything proactive. Because most of the time, I think proactivity comes from the top and support position for Team Liquid, and when they are sitting on a Mordekaiser and Lux, there is very little space for them to gain. You pick Lux together with Caitlyn strictly for the lane phase, and in general together with Caitlyn, these are the type of champions you have to pick for the synergy. You think Thresh, you think Lux, you think something else. But CoJJ looked the best when he was playing, for example, the Rakan, and Caitlyn Rakan is a trash lane. You're just not going to do something with it. They picked Mordekaiser on 3. Other options against Ornn could be, I don't know. You could maybe just pick a tank and be happy with it, just to supply your Graves with something. You could definitely look to just pick a Maokai and suffer in the matchup and, be alright. I wouldn't mind that. I would love teams to take that approach a little bit more. But aesthetically, trading Ornn for Graves or Orianna is not something that makes, it's not like people are going to be shocked by it, right? It's something that is okay. This is something we saw in the play-ins. And Team Liquid's Graves was something we were excited about. But I just think Mordekaiser is a champion that just is tough to pull off. It works if you play against the Camille and you solo kill the guy, but I feel like Morde is, in most of the games that I see, this champion just has a very hard time. Another thing that could potentially be picked here is, of course, GP. I was expecting GP here or a tank. I thought it has been universally agreed that Ardir Impact is going to be a weak side top laner. But early on, the atomization for Ornn is going to be so easy. He's going to relax. Rakan Thresh ban. I think these were decent target bans into CoJJ. Rakan doesn't go through, but he could have also just picked Rakan third and tanked a couple of more top lane bans and be good. I think they could have been very, very good and well off. And when Team Liquid don't have that same level of agency in the support and the top lane role when it comes to, engaging and so forth, I think Team Liquid might have a better chance. But this was just a slow and painful death for Team Liquid after those 2 ganks of Volibear landed. So with that in mind, I think the next time Team Liquid just need to recognize that they need to have time as a friend, and then just play solid in the early game. I think when Team Liquid has time on their side, they are good at holding their ground. But holding your ground against a team that is going to scale better than you is kind of pointless. And that's the only thing that Team Liquid did after they gave up some leads. This was just jungle gap, mid gap was pretty big in this one. We continue on to the next game, and I have to admit, this was the first game of the day, so my memory is a little bit vague. So take it with a grain of salt. I recommend that you go watch it. In preparation for the next one, though, I think Team Liquid, as I mentioned, just time as their friend. G2 versus Suning, probably the most hyped game of the whole World Championship. Draft-wise, there were some things that stood out. Nidalee, Lilia, blue side ban, that's pretty much conceding that you're not going to play these champions for the rest of the tournament. All right. Caitlyn ban on blue, all right, we don't have any issue with it. Twisted Fate, first pick. Surprising, the thing that is surprising the most is I think G2, looking at the way they drafted here, is throughout their bootcamp, this is something that they practice a lot. They practice a lot in this bootcamp because if you look at G2 strengths, you instantly think of Caps and Wunder. Caps and Wunder were the best performance in recent times, and putting them on Twisted Fate Volibear puts a lot of that power into the hands of others. Wunder played a great game, but it just matters less because he's on Volibear. Volibear is fine into Renekton, Shen and Ornn are removed on Suning's side. You could even think that Suning were banning for a potential Fnatic matchup. These are bans that seem to work against every European team. We have a little bit of a European meta developing. All right? Shen, Lucian, Ornn banned for the Renekton blind pick, the Renekton first pick, Volibear as a counter. From an aesthetic point of view, meaning, in this particular game, looking at, if we look at the matchup in a vacuum, I don't have a problem with Volibear into Renekton, but you would wish that G2 would have the guts to go for more. But I think this is, a good starting point. I think Volibear into Renekton, it's all right. I don't think it's that big of an issue. Syndra gets picked into Twisted Fate. Of course, winning matchup for Syndra, but most matchups into Twisted Fate are. Graves gets locked in. And in this position, I think Graves is the premium jungler. Lee Sin gets locked in. If there was any other jungler in this tournament, I would be worried. But this is SoFM Lee Sin. The story of him is completely different. Seeing Renekton Lee Sin on the same red side, in a lot of positions, I would be like, really? We don't really like that. But SoFM's Lee Sin scales good because he plays good. And he has a very interesting build that seems to work, and I enjoy what I see. So, it's hard to talk bad about it when it works. That's the silliness of it, and he pulls it off. And in this game, he completely massacred Jankos in the jungle. Jankos had a very, very terrible performance. Kalista gets banned, one of Perk's classics. Thresh as a response. I was very surprised with the Tahm Kench bans. Why on earth is Tahm Kench being banned here? I thought the obvious choice would be Leona, but I guess what they're afraid of is just Mercury value. But I don't really care about Mercury that much if you are Lee Sin, Ashe, and Renekton on the same team. I think if blue side is buying Mercury, I think that's all right. I think that's not a problem. Nautilus is also fine into Ezreal and Bard, no problem at all. Mercury doesn't have as much of a value against Nautilus. We don't mind that, but the Tahm Kench ban was very confusing. Sword Art also really loves the Nautilus, but I think Nautilus Leona kind of leads to the same ending here. Ezreal Bard gets locked in. I really, really like this rotation, and I think this kind of made G2's comp much better than the enemy composition. Because Bard into Ashe Syndra, naturally super, super good. Ezreal realistically shouldn't die against the enemy team. This is very, very strong for 5 picks, but the only thing you're obviously worried about is the lane phase. The lane phase will be the question mark. And in this game, honestly, Ezreal Bard did quite well. They survived, and there was a key moment where Ashe and Nautilus went for a base where the wave was not in a good position, and this gave Ezreal Bard a lot of breathing room, and even so far as a CS advantage, and that just shouldn't happen when you're playing Ashe and Nautilus. We are going to go into a deep dive on this channel and a review, because it's hard to summarize this without the visual. But this game was Suning completely in control. Jankos did very silly invades because Syndra against Twisted Fate. Twisted Fate has no prio. Graves needs to do something crazy, like level 2, level 2, attack it, or break something, make some sacrifices with Bard maybe to get TF some breathing room, but that breathing room never came. And then the first time Graves showed up in mid lane was him invading the enemy Raptors, And surprisingly, even before that death happened, he was already behind. And Lee Sin was already level 5 to his 4, and Suning had a bit of a lead already at that point in the game, and Graves invaded, died to Syndra, and that made the TF lane even harder. Eventually, Suning kept snowballing. They got Drake after Drake, and they kept suffocating G2. And the only thing that G2 had going on for them was the occasional kill with the Bard ultimate, and they burned flashes and so forth. This game went on for forever, and the composition in Ezreal and Bard definitely delivered eventually. Suning had the Ocean Soul, which made it very tricky for G2 to win fights, but as long as the enemy champions are not hitting you, you're not going to gain any regen at all from the Ocean Soul. You need to hit things. There was some mispositions by Angel that gave G2 opportunities. Gold cards were landed, and I think even though everyone's giving Perks a lot of credit here, there were a lot of fights where he got caught and died because Suning were very good at positioning around the Drake fights. Eventually, in the key fights that decided the game, I think Perks did step up, and as the game progressed, he did in fact play better, but it's hard to forgive some of those moments that happen in the game too. Ezreal, Bard were definitely like the key pieces that made the big difference here in the draft, because there's a lot of sinning going on in the first 3 picks on both sides, and then Ezreal Bard kind of neatly ties everything together, which we appreciate. I think Caps also had a beautiful performance considering his lane matchup is so damn hard. And I thought coming into this tournament that G2 would put more of a focus onto the TF and onto, of course, not onto the TF, but more onto the Caps and Wunder and giving them more agency. But here, the Bard is a very strong pick into the enemy champions, and Mickey played some of the best League of Legends I've seen from him all year long. If he continues in this form, all of a sudden G2 is looking like they have 3 players that can compete with the absolute best, and that's super, super important. Perks was ramping up, and Jankos needs to completely reset because that just doesn't fly. And Suning, I think, when it comes to their drafting, I think they have strong enough lanes across the board to allow themselves to be greedier. They can be a lot greedier. I think they can draft compositions that are going to be better in the mid to late game. I don't think they need to be so heavy-handed on the lane matchups. This is something that might work more in an LPL environment where egos clash and fights happen very, very often, and big leads are blown out of the water from the get-go. But even in this game, they were in a winning position and they kind of threw it away. This was definitely, Suning's game to lose, 100%, and G2 kind of stole it away from death. But with the way the group is shaping out, I think G2 can definitely drop games to TL and MachiX. I know a lot of fans of Team Liquid are just, completely disappointed, but it's only one game, so please relax. I think nothing is decided yet, and there's definitely a world where Team Liquid definitely step up. I just think the draft made it very difficult for them, and maybe they underestimated MachiX. I think I want to give praise to G2 as well for recognizing that the Ezreal Bard is good, because I don't think this was something that was planned. Them banning Tahm definitely shows me that it wasn't planned, and Ezreal Bard was just the lock-in that solved the game for them. Ezreal Bard scales so good into the rest of the champions, and at the risk of sounding like a one-string banjo, we continue to the next game. This was a very interesting one as well, because this really showcased Damwon's precision when it comes to every aspect of the game. Rogue drafted a composition that is going to struggle in the lane phases and then eventually have strong team fights together with the Taric, Hecarim, and Syndra Kalista and so forth. Damwon, if they are stronger than you in the early game on paper, they are going to really get a lead. They're going to get a lead. Canyon on Graves, delivering once again on a different champion. Like, the only thing that went wrong for Damwon this game really was Beryl's, overcommitment. Many times, the only opportunities that Rogue got was when Barrow kind of ran it down. He dove and he gave Larson a couple of kills here and there. And that was the only sense of opportunity that was felt. The Lulu technology is also super, super interesting. I think the build was also super beautiful. I was very happy to see Lulu in competitive, because this is something we've seen in solo queue so much, and it's strong and competitive for very similar reasons. He didn't go for some, Chad Lulu build like Captain Flowers was hoping, but Lulu into Gangplank is something that she's going to do well in. She's going to have prio. I know a lot of people want to point fingers to Finn, but this is not really on him. I think Rogue drafted something that had clear weaknesses, and Damwon exposed them, and with that exposure, took this game all the way to the grave. And some people were saying that, Rogue versus Damwon was way more competitive than JDG and Damwon. And I want to respectfully disagree, because never at any point in the game did I feel like Rogue had a chance. I think this is a tough draft to execute. Too greedy. I don't think Damwon is the team that you can go greedy against. Camille ban, TF ban, Nidalee ban, understandable after that first game. 3 champions that, of course, Rogue don't want to play. I still like that Rogue, recognize, they're trying their thing. They're doing their own thing, and they recognize the strengths of their players, and they're not trying to pretend. If this was Mad Lions playing against Damwon, they would first pick Camille or some shit, and they would kid themselves, right? It would just be a lie. If Barrow didn't run it down, I think this could have been one of the most clean games that we would have all tournament long. This was a Damwon masterclass. Hecarim gets locked in, and I like the Silas technology too. This is something that he's very happy to pick into the Syndra. And Hecarim ultimate is such a premium ultimate that you should really, really, just wow. It's a fantastic ultimate. Hecarim's ultimate has a 1-to-1 AP scaling. And then the Syndra ultimate is, of course, not ideal, but it's alright, it's okay. And then knowing Finn's champion pool and what he prefers to play, almost guaranteed that Silas is going to have a great ultimate. Finn is leaning towards the tanks, and all tanks have just OP ultimates. Think of the tanks. Maokai, Ornn, Malphite, and then GP, he's a weak side top laner too. These are 4 champions that give fantastic Silas ultimates. So I really, really like this 4th pick too. You already have a guaranteed strong ult, and you got another 2 more here because Rogue wanted to just make a draft that is strong. Here there was room for some, cocktail if you wanted to send Lulu Ashe into bottom, into Taric, and maybe you could win the lane harder. I like the Lulu into GP though, and just keeping Pantheon bot. I think you don't need to cocktail it too much. This game, Kalista Taric held their own, and that was cool. I liked the itemization of Damwon. They went for lethality graves. Once again, this was a goddamn clinic. I think Lulu is something that we're going to see more of, and I think this draft was very well rounded in the way Damwon executed their fights. They played it very patient. They took it slow. Rogue hung on and didn't give up, some glaring leads, and they didn't really run it down. They tried to find their opportunities, which is, good in itself, but they never really had a chance. They didn't stand a chance, and Damwon showing that they can play so many different styles. And I think that's so key, because everyone's question mark pinging, is Graves a useful champion? Everyone's question mark pinging, is it really a useful champion? If Canyon is playing it, I am not worried. Canyon right now looking like an absolute beast of a player, and Damwon really, really impresses on the first 2 days. I really recommend, if anyone loves beautiful League of Legends, this is the game to watch. In terms of changes, what you want to do for Rogue, stylistically for Rogue, it's hard to say that they should push for changes. They have some strengths, some weaknesses. I think if anything, you would love to see a Graves first pick instead of a Hecarim. The Graves is going to come in, and Graves is very happy to play into Hecarim. He is going to have a target that he's going to be able to hit in team fights. And Graves naturally has true grit, which gives him a lot of armor. He is better than him early on, and I think this is just, I don't think this is a matchup that you can give up to a team like Damwon. Damwon just seemed like they don't have weaknesses right now. And I think we just have to wait for the JDG down one matchup again. If JDG can find a better draft and not completely run it down, completely run it down in the level one, where of course Jin got the first blood and so forth, then maybe we might have a real matchup, and then we can begin to rate down one higher and higher. We continue. I just wanted to wrap up the point about Rogue. I think in Rogue's case, they're just sticking to their guns. If it was a different team, if we are looking at this from a vacuum standpoint, you go for Graves here. And then, of course, when Ashe gets locked in, you choose your choice. Like here, Kalista against Ashe. On paper, that's not so good, but Hansama likes Kalista. So it's tough to, argue against the choices Rogue is making. Because once again, they recognize their strengths. They're trying to pull them off. And I don't think you should, flip the script upside down for your team just because you're facing down one. And if Rogue is facing a team that is on paper better than them, I think Rogue is not going to be the team that beats those teams because they are not playing some high variance playstyle. But I did enjoy what they did against PSG. Like if they can pull off like a level 1 gank onto Showmaker and, take control of the game early, that could be, the difference, because the Rogue with the lead still looks very dangerous. We continue on to PSG versus JTG. This was just a massacre. This was surprising from a draft point of view. Ornn gets locked in, Sett Ashe, Graves gets picked, and Jin into Ashe. This is something we see often. Sylas get locked in. I thought it was a Sett jungle or a Sett support. Sylas top into Ornn. Natural stuff. Leona Thresh ban into Pantheon pick. Surprising that Pantheon doesn't get banned. Kindred Lilia is banned for 5 here. 2 of Kanavi's special champions. Syndra is the blind pick, and then Echo as a counter. So it's a very wild draft. There's options here. You can send Sett support, Pantheon jungle, Sylas top, and then you can set Sett jungle, Pantheon support. But they decided to go for Sylas jungle and then Echo mid and then Sett top. Now Sett is decent into Ornn. We saw this matchup twice today. It's decent. It has its purpose. Against Ornn. But in this environment, picking Sylas and then having Sett in the jungle is going to increase the power of your early game, I believe, because you have Sylas into Ornn, and then Sett is the jungler that is going to be better for impacting mid, because Sylas Echo 2v2 mid. What the fuck is that? Sylas Echo 2v2 mid. What is this? It doesn't really exist. Sylas jungle doesn't excite me too much because this champion has such a slow clear speed. Like this champion clears jungle. You see him all attack for 40, and it is just silly. I feel like JDG kind of just gets away with this because of how much better they are. The Pantheon is fantastic in Lumao's hands. Lumao really massacred this game on Pantheon. It started with the dive on bottom, and then afterwards Sylas gets a kill. Sylas borderline is the same like Kayn. Like it's the same champion like Kayn. The moment you reach AP jungle item, it's like evolving. Boom. He evolves. He evolves into a real champion, and he begins to clear at a decent rate. And he gets an early kill. They dove bot. Pantheon Ashe. Big bot diff. Like I don't understand why the hell you want to pick Bard here. The enemy is showing Sylas and Sett, and you're picking Bard. It is already like there's already champions that you're not that good against, and you're giving Sylas a Bard ult. You have Syndra, Jin, and Ornn on your team, and you're giving Sylas a Bard ult, and you're picking Bard into Pantheon. Like that matchup is not good. Like what on earth? It is very, very strange that Bard comes in here. Syndra blind pick is, alright. It's not terrible. I think it's strange that we see so little Zoe. I thought this is a good Zoe spot, but I don't know exactly what tank plays. So I can't say that it was correct for him, but I'm surprised by how little Zoe we see in this tournament. Because we have some fantastic Zoe players at this tournament. But Zoe blind looks good to me, especially when Sylas is showing. You don't give an ult that is useful. And then in terms of picking support, like just go Nautilus or even Tahm Kench here. Like imagine you have Zoe, Tahm, and then you have Ornn, Graves, Jin. Like that's a composition that can fight back. the enemy has Pantheon and Ashe, and Tom can be alright against that. You know, you can save your AD carry, you can prevent the arrows, and you can be good, you know? You can be good. But they went for the Bard, give Silas Bard ult, give yourself a shit matchup. Why not? There's no real target here to Bard ult except Ashe, but that's going to be the least of your problems because she's going to just fire arrows from a distance. Echo gets the last pick, of course, good into Bard, good into Graves, good into Jhin, good into Syndra. Ornn doesn't mind Echo at all, but of course he's not that good of an ult target, so Echo is just a prime time pick. If Silas gets ahead, he's a jungle that functions. If he doesn't, he looks kind of strange. JGG completely annihilated PSG. This was very embarrassing, and PSG are looking like they're going to go 0-6 in this group because PSG is not going to beat Damwon. Let's not kid ourselves. This was just annihilation. This was cruel, very, very cruel. This was quick. And if you want to learn how to play Pantheon, yeah, this is the champion. Someone in chat asked the good questions. We don't see Akali or Zoe. Some explanations, please. So Zoe, I don't know too much because Zoe makes sense to me because it can synergize with Graves. I think Graves as a jungler loves to play with Zoe because Zoe has prio and can give that to Graves. Akali is not that good right now in the current jungle meta because Akali doesn't give anything to his jungler. When we're seeing Graves, Nidalee, Lilia, all of these champions don't synergize good with Akali. But when other jungle champions start to show up, that is going to be alright, you know, that's going to be good. I guess in this spot here, maybe they were afraid of picking Zoe because enemy can go set mid, and then like, I don't know, last pick Evelynn. that could be something. I don't know. But Zoe, you can't go Zoe mid together with an AP jungle. That's an argument against it. You can't really play Zoe when there's tanks on the enemy team. That's an argument against it. But Akali just can't give anything to his jungler. That's the problem. But I think when jungle bans start to land with Nidalee Graves out, I think Akali can begin to show up again. We saw top esports play it. I don't think it's a bad champion. I think it's a strong champion in the right spots. So I don't think we're not going to see it. Next one in line is Genji versus TSM. And this was kind of a tragedy. I think everyone knows because you can just see in game. What I want to see from TSM that we haven't seen in 2 games now is everyone was very excited about Bjergsen and Spica playing together. I think Spica played good this game. I actually think Spica played good this game. There's no way in hell that you can actually put any blame on Spica in this game because he found ganks somehow. He found ganks on top. He found a kill on bottom side, which is very, very difficult to do when you're getting shoved in almost everywhere. It's just so surprising to see the Zilean pick actually make an appearance here at the world stage because you're laning against a set. Like there was a point in time in this lane matchup where Seth was hitting the tower. Seth was hitting the tower because he just, you know, this Glacial Augment Zilean doesn't do anything to him. You just ignore him. Like, there's nothing that Zilean can do. Really. But what can he do? And I think there's a lot of matchups that are the same for Zilean. Like Zilean, realistically, in most matchups should be losing. But here in the jungle meta, giving up that much prio is too much. What kind of synergy does Zilean and Nidalee really have? Nothing. Nothing at all. It is terrible. Terrible to pick it together. And this is supposed to be, you know, the Bjergsen-led team. And with the decisions that TSM are making in draft, doesn't seem like they know this themselves. And I think Spica performed well in this game. He really did. To find ganks in such situations is difficult. And you can blame Genji for that, or you can, you know, speak well about Spica for that. But either way, I think, you know, he did a good job with the circumstances he was put in. Renekton Nidalee, sure, is strong. Volibear gets locked in together with Lilia. You know, this is one of those positions where Lilia, as an example, is a good champ. Because here, all the forms of CC are very dodgeable for Lilia. Very, very dodgeable. You have the set already. You're going to have an AD mid most likely if BDD chooses to play it. You can send it bottom too, so you have options. But Lilia, there's no real CC besides the Renekton W. You can kite here, you can stay alive in the fights long with a couple of stacks. And this was one of the better spots for Lilia, especially with the Karma last pick. So I liked it. I really liked it. Why didn't they pick Azir as a question from the chat? Well, Azir is banned. Azir is banned. They targeted BDD on this, which is kind of strange. I think Azir is kind of outdated. And I think BDD can play enough champions to have like an equal impact to Azir. So I wouldn't really invest a ban into this. Kalista, alright, you know, Ruler Kalista is very, very dangerous. But once again, Kalista is not that big of a pick in this meta. Like, do you care if you're playing against Ruler Ashe or Ruler Kalista? Maybe this is just a question of what you're being used to. But this reminds me too much of the Mad Lions draft back when they picked like GP, Nidalee, Senna together, and there's just nothing to provide there. I think the biggest issue that TSM have ran into is when they have Nidalee and Twisted Fate is banned, there's nothing that TSM have shown that can play together with Nidalee. And when Twisted Fate is banned, they need to lower their priority on Nidalee. That's how I see it. And Zillia and Nidalee have no synergy. Syndra and Nidalee is also not that fantastic. TF Nidalee, synergy, right? That's good. You pick Set, that has synergy. But we haven't seen TSM pull that off. So you have to put this Nidalee pick into question. Nidalee Renekton, good. What is your follow-up? What is your mid laner that's going to supply this with additional power? All in all, Genji, you know, did super well in lanes. I thought Volibear's build was kind of weird considering he is into Renekton. Like, he didn't have a single armor item for a very long time. And he had Mercury, which I guess against Renekton Nidalee is alright. But he didn't have any armor stats. But with the set prio, Lily and Seth just invaded and took everything that Nidalee owns. They took her pants, they took her camps, they took her shirt, almost stole away her spear. That's how cruel it was. And then Genji was just first on most objectives, and Ezreal Karma kept the prio, and there was CS advantages across the board. Then eventually, with the platings being gone, Ezreal Karma getting a mana immune base, they began to also win out the lanes. And then everything was just looking inevitable for Genji. The only hope the TSM had was the couple of kills that Spica set up for through lane ganks. And that was the only opportunity he had in this game. And being that suffocated as a Nidalee is very, very boring. There's just no reason to draft together Senna, Zillion in the same team. And then Renekton is your carry. You're going to speed him up and he's going to 1v9 or what? Like, I don't see what the idea here is. I think it's kind of hoping that the enemy team plays bad, and that's not something that you can do at this level. I want to see TSM in a light where they put more agency onto the 2v2 mid, give us a chance to see what Bjergsen is made of, because these last two games we saw nothing. And sure, you know, maybe against Fnatic he roamed once into topside, but other than that, not really much was going on. And I know Bjergsen is good, but maybe the comfort of playing in North America is something that is, you know, felt in TSM's bones. But then again, they bootcamped in preparation for this World Championship, and I'm hoping they, you know, can show us so much more. So much more. And the Senna pick for double lift, I don't know, can he play anything else? We'll have to wait and see. Twitch got banned, maybe he can play Twitch, I'm not sure. I think Senna Rakan did decently fine in lane, considering Ezreal Karma is not like the easiest thing to lane against. Karma has been nerfed, but it just didn't matter, you know. Genji reached 2 core on Ezreal, and then it was just over. Ruler Ezreal took over the game. This is Ruler Ezreal we're talking about, you know. It's absolutely crazy. A lot of people have been asking me about Volibear Renekton. I think Volibear can win this matchup, definitely. I think the advantage that Renekton has is the gank setup is a bit better, but the champions serve a very similar purposes. I think in team fights, Volibear has an easier time with access, but Renekton does have a better burst. I think Volibear also has more itemization options. You can build more tanky and so forth, and just go along with the flow of the game. Can eventually get maybe Solari or something. But I think it's a decent pick into the Renekton depending on your jungle pick. But it's not like that one-sided that like, oh, Voli is picked into Renekton, Renekton is countered. I don't think it's that extreme. But I think Voli has more to say in terms of dictating the wave position. You know, if he has stacks to hit on his passive from level 1 and can maintain the push, I think Volibear 1v1 wins. But if he's not allowed to and Renekton can stack Rage, then I think Renekton wins. So it all comes down to the flow of the game in top lane, in my opinion. Anyhow, we continue. LGD versus Fnatic. Once again, you know, the Western teams did very silly drafts here in Group C. So this is a situation where LGD decide to ban Evelynn, Lucian, Shen. We like the Shen ban because it supplies Ornn with an opportunity to do even better. So I have the Ornn lock-in, Graves, Syndra, 1-2 for Fnatic. In some cases I would be like, yeah, this is alright. But keep in mind that, you know, we have Nidalee open. So I think this shows that maybe when Lucian is out, Selfmade did play 5 games of solo queue Nidalee, played a lot of Nidalee in the past. Fnatic as a team is not ready to play Nidalee. Yeah? Because if this is a high level team, I think what you look for here is set Nidalee rotation. And that gives you a lot of options. Nothing is decided in the draft. And the enemy is going to not have the greatest time. I think that's just the best rotation to do into the Ornn. And then you have so many options on third. You can look to go Camille. You can look to pick Pantheon for your support role. You can send set top into Ornn. You can set mid. You just have so many options. But of course, this is not Fnatic. You know, these things that I'm explaining is not Fnatic. I'm just talking from the point of view of like, what do you do to react to the Ornn first pick? Graves, Syndra are 2 champions that are not that great into Ornn. The strength that they have is the 2v2 mid is quite strong. But Fnatic, is this a team that we associate with strong 2v2 mid? No. They don't play 2v2 mid at all. So this was very surprising, very shocking. Kindred, Echo get locked in. And Echo in isolation does well against Syndra. But against Graves, Syndra, you definitely can snowball enough to cause damage. But this is not what Fnatic usually do. This is not something that Fnatic are known for. That's why I was a bit confused. You can see one of my tweets. I was like, I think this is a heavy draft win for LGD because they got everything they're comfortable on. Shea loves to play Echo into Syndra, Kindred for peanuts in a good state, like good game. You know, it's just Kindred is having a decent game in this situation. And then we have the Thresh. The Thresh that's been banned so many times. You know, you could also say after, you know, a team like Fnatic maybe definitely should just look to ban Ornn here when Shen is out and Evelynn and Lucian and Evelynn is out. I think if you don't play, if you're not willing to go set Nidalee in here on 1 and 2, I think you are in trouble in this draft against the Ornn. Thresh gets picked and Echo doesn't give a fuck about Thresh. Thresh is one of the, you know, it's a decent support against most champions because it's largely dependent on your skill. But Echo is very happy to play into these 3 champs. There's no hard CC here. Phase Rush is going to do wonders. You can play Phase Rush Echo. You can go Electrocute. This is a very, very fun game already for Echo and Ornn. You know, these are 3 champions that aren't like really insanely good into Ornn and Echo. Ezreal, Rakan get banned, and then we have the Jhin 4th pick. So I get it when teams pick Jhin into Ashe. You know, I get completely when they pick Jhin into Ashe. It's alright. But you see on the blue side, you see Echo and Ornn already. Jin isn't that fantastic into it. But to be fair, if we think about it, which AD carry is? I don't know. But at least you can look to maybe 5 pick AD carry and maybe you can find something that is more ideal. Maybe you can look to play Caitlyn here. Maybe Caitlyn would be the ideal one. Maybe people need to play Zyra Khan again. I don't know. The AD carries are not that great into tanks right now. But I think Caitlyn probably would have been the best. Like Trash Caitlyn, you at least have a strong lane, and then you have some options to follow up on some CC. You have champions that want to play in a similar fashion. Thresh, Syndra, and Caitlyn are very similar. I see that a lot of people in the chat are just writing random AD carry names, but keep in mind you're blind picking here. Sure, you can fifth pick, but this was a Jhin blind. If you're looking to blind pick your AD, we need to keep this in mind too. Another thing is we need to keep in mind matchups. Like you can't just pick Sivir to pick Sivir. Like it doesn't work that way. Sivir needs to survive a lane phase, and the lane phase is very important. Ellis recommended Varus good tank shred. Well, I guess it would be okay. Like you have an ult against Echo that he doesn't like to deal with, but Varus has been nerfed so many times that it just makes his lane so weak, and that really hurts. I think Varus is nerfed really hard. I think if anything, maybe Kog'Maw, right? But Kog'Maw needs a composition too around him. Kog'Maw definitely needs like a comp around him, maybe the Lulu top or some shit, But I think Caitlyn, like just to keep it simple and not get stuck here forever, just Caitlyn would have been the best choice in my opinion. And then Misfortune gets locked in. Honestly, here it doesn't matter what AD carry you pick. You just need to pick an AD carry that doesn't run it down. And then Nautilus, okay. And then finally the set pick into the Ornn. So you have a very AD heavy team, a team that will struggle to kill Ornn. That was easy to predict. Fnatic have full comfort. Sure, they're playing champions they all enjoy playing and they're good at, but that is not going to mask the tough truth of this game. The tough and hard truth of this game is indeed that you're going to get outscaled, and you need to snowball giga hard in order for that to happen. And Jhin Thresh against Misfortune Nautilus, it's not some crazy matchup that is going to make a difference. It is not something that is going to be like some big decider. Jhin Thresh is fine, and Echo Syndra arguable. It's a skill matchup. It's a 2v2. It's a 2v2 that Grave Syndra early win, but they need to do enough damage to Echo for it to matter. Eventually, Echo is going to get Mercury and win the 1v1. Ornn as well. Like Seth Graves can do some damage to Ornn, which they did in this game. Beppo had a good early lane phase, but it just wasn't big enough to matter in this game. And Ornn eventually bought some Ornn items. Echo reached death cap, and the game is just over. Misfortune was also super far ahead on CS, and that's it. That was it. It's just a composition that just doesn't do well. If you think about other choices that they can make here in the fifth pick, I think someone in spam writing Silas in the chat. Silas would be good. Some good ults here. Echo, Ornn, and Nautilus. There's some decent ults for Silas. You synergize better with Graves than Sett, but the early game wasn't really an issue for Graves and Sett on the top side. Definitely Silas would have been better, but I think with how weak the first 4 picks are against Ornn and Echo, I think even Silas wouldn't save them. I think Fnatic went to full comfort, and if this is what we see from Fnatic when Shen, Evelynn, Lucian is banned, we might have a problem for Fnatic. I think Fnatic need to recognize that they are very good in lane. very, very good in lane. And I think they can do well against LGD and TSM in lane. And as long as time is their friend, I think they're going to do so good. I think they can become greedier in the champions that they choose. I think Whippo has had a good run in the tournament so far. I think they just need to go greedier, understand that the games against LGD and TSM are going to be very, very slow, and macro wise, and also, in terms of how they play out the lane phases, I think, you know, they're going to be good. I still think Fnatic, if they see this clear identity of the group, I think Fnatic can still take second. I don't think anyone's going to beat Genji in this group. I don't think it's going to happen. I doubt it. And it is what it is. Genji is looking stronger and stronger. The first day, LGD, the only reason they came close was because BDD wasn't really performing that well. And also, what's his name? Ruler wasn't performing perfectly, but today they played much better, and Genji looks super dangerous. Klid is legit. Klid is playing well. Rascal is playing super well, and all the other pieces of the team we knew already are going to play well. So Genji first in this group, no problem. Sure, it might happen that they play spoiler, they drop a game, but Genji first, I think, no questions asked. I think LZK is looking monstrous in this tournament. So all in all, we've been talking about 51 minutes. I don't know if I'm talking slower this episode or just talking more, but I think we can take a look at this little capture here, which has the groups. I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger so I can actually see it. I'm legally blind. G2, 1-0. I don't think the Group A is as settled as people want to make it out to be. Like, people were waving the white flag for America and so forth. But I don't think everything is dead. I think Team Liquid can bounce back from that game. I think Machi is legit, but Suning and G2 showed some serious issues in their game that, of course, they can also improve on. But I don't think this group is like dusted and settled at all. Machi is in to play. I think this Group A, there's a world where it might look similar to Group C in terms of closeness. And I don't think we can, just assume that this is over. Team Liquid can definitely, bounce back from that game. I wouldn't be worried, Anyhow, I think just the question is Team Liquid's depth in terms of champion pool. That's the only thing that's worrying. Because today we saw that Machi can match them in terms of play and play even better. But they also have deeper champion pools, which after today, it's hard to predict Team Liquid in the next match that they play. So Team Liquid have a lot of issues to figure out, but it's one game. Let's not, Team Liquid fans, don't give up so quickly. Group B, Damwon first. We might have a tiebreak against JDG. I don't think we should count out JDG so quick, but JDG seem pretty cocktail in the way they draft, and Damwon seem to be very precise in the way they draft, and they seem to be the best drafting team throughout the tournament. So with this being said, it's hard to imagine that JDG is going to claw the way back, but I think Rogue a third. Maybe they can find an opportunity where JDG troll draft or something, but JDG is better than Rogue. I don't think we can get too excited about that. Rogue is not a team that is going to do something insanely crazy against, any team. If they find opportunities where they level 1 kill and do stuff like that, that's cool. That's cool. Just to finalize on G2, of course G2 can get better too. I think Suning can also get better. Suning dropped a game that was won. G2 today, Jankos ran it down like he has never ran down before, and I'm sure he's going to bounce back. It's just the Vietnamese jungle curse. Looking at Group C, TSM just need to play to their beloved strengths. You need to play to your beloved strengths, show what you're capable of with the 2v2 mid, give Bjergsen a champion and a 2v2 that can actually function. Zillion Nidalee Syndra is, just not that great synergy-wise, and I want to see more action on this front. First game, Bjergsen, he laned against a Nemesis that lost 3 minions, so he was up XP, he had no flash. He managed to get a CS lead, which was good, he used the situation. But other than that, he did one gank into top side, but Lucian bought Mana Mune, was relevant in the game, roamed into top twice too, and I don't think he proved that he's better than Nemesis in any shape or form. I don't think, with the start that Syndra had in this game, that you can easily say that the Nemesis played worse. I think that's completely unfair. Perks was ramping up in G2, of course, but there was a lot of, issues there. There was a lot of issues that Perks also brought to the table, but he was saying in an interview that the team was quite nervous on their first game, so I'm expecting a better G2. Group C, my prediction with Genji Fnatic going out, I think still I'm going to stick to it, unless, LGD, I just thought their draft is so predictable, but maybe Fnatic's draft is more predictable. TSM need to realize that you can't draft Nidalee with whatever the fuck in mid. You need to have, in TSM's case, when they have Nidalee TF, that works. These are champions that synergize. But other than that, I don't think Bjergsen wants to play the right champions. Not saying that he doesn't want to because he has some ego, but I think in the context of TSM, he doesn't want to. Group D, tomorrow, decides everything. Top Esports against DRX. I think the Korean teams have shown better prep. But Top Esports and JGG are still really fucking good. I think this matchup is going to be close in the context of best of 1. I think in best of 5, I would go Top Esports side. But best of 1 is going to be tough to predict. I lean towards Top Esports, but I can still see a world with DRX win. And also, of course, for FlyQuest, Unicorns of Love, they're fighting for third. I believe Unicorns of Love is better than FlyQuest, but hopefully FlyQuest can show us a lot more than they did against Top Esports. And that's just how it is. Unicorns of Love were lucky that they showed us what they're capable of in play-ins because they got massacred even harder by DRX. I think Korean teams just in play, like in group stages, have always been fucking good. They come with great preparation, and that makes them so dangerous. Things to pay attention to is Pantheon. Everyone's talking about Pantheon. I think this champion is fucking good. I think Graves, we're going to see less spots where it gets picked. I think some teams need to accept that they can't play Graves. Some teams need to accept that they don't play Nidalee. And against the teams that do play them, you might have to remove them. I think Graves, needs a mid laner with Prio. That's why I mentioned Zoe. He needs a tank in the top lane, like an Ornn. Like if you have Ornn, Graves, Zoe, that's a fucking comp for Graves, and he's super happy. The issue with Graves is he doesn't have an AP jungle item. That's the problem with Graves. All the other AP junglers, they have AP jungle item, and it just increases your clear speed by such a crazy, absurd amount. It is completely unfair. And with that being said, if Graves makes a mistake and he's behind the curve, and the enemy jungler has, the AP jungle item, they just bolt ahead. Nidalee gets ahead, like a rocket, and that's a blower. Kindred as a champion into Graves, Kindred has decent scaling, an ultimate that is going to be so much more useful than Graves will ever do. And I think some teams just need to stick to what they know and stick to what they can win with, because everyone's trying to be cheeky, but it's not working. That's why I appreciated Rogue's draft, even though against Damon it's not going to work, is because they stuck true to what they know. And they didn't try to bullshit themselves, or Finn, you're going to play a carry, and Spite, you're going to lock in Graves, and Smurf on Canyon. They didn't kid themselves at all. They gave, the issue in that game was that the Raider game was too weak, and Damon capitalized. But I think Damon right now in the current form is going to capitalize on whatever weakness your draft comes with. And Damon just showed a great depth. And usually I'm not the type of person that says that a team is unbeatable, because no one is. But it is what it is. Thank you so much for watching this summary of day number 2 of the group stages. I was on the analyst desk today. I feel very honored. It was good to work with Shox and Ender again. Really fantastic and talented individuals. They are really good what they do. They make it so goddamn easy for me to just sit there and talk shit and wear a suit and dangle Ender's earring, which is fun. But yeah, I think the teams you want to pay attention to, Damwon. I was talking a little bit about Pantheon and how OP it is, and about Graves and the jungle meta in general. I want to see Gragas support. I think Gragas is the counter to Pantheon. Gragas is so goddamn good into Pantheon. It's a great champion. I love Gragas support. You're gonna hear this many times. And I want to see Silas into Ornn if people start picking Silas into Ornn. And a little shout out to Zidcore for subscribing to Twitch Prime. This video is now 1 hour long. We're going to move on into a G2 versus Suning review. What about Galio support? Trash. Absolute trash ever since they nerfed, W Flash. Which support item on Gragas? Just lasted minions. Taric in the Pantheon is okay, but I think you can find better. Taric is a bit too slow. Pantheon can find ways to impact the map. I think, if we look at these teams, let's just do one final thing. If we look at the teams and look at like the best performers in the top end of the group, I think Mission in Machi Esports, very juicy. Gemini was also good. Suning, I think SoFM, what an absolute fucking beast, SoFM. G2, I think Mickey and Caps. I want to give more props to Mickey because Caps is expected. Mickey also kind of expected, but this was a fucking performance. He kept them in the game. Damwon, Canyon, what a fucking monster. Canyon, Ghost also going under the radar. Absolute beast. Everyone on Damwon is just doing fucking well, but Canyon is just above and beyond the best performing jungler right now. Joe Carson only played one game, and that was against FlyQuest, so it's a bit of an unfair situation, but up until this point, don't go Gragas Spell Thief. JD Gaming, I think Lumao was an absolute beast. Rogue, I think, today Larson underperformed. I think in terms of what impressed me about Rogue is just their bottom. I think their bot is playing super well at this tournament. Genji, I think also Clid is the standout performer for Genji. I think Ruler definitely stepped up, BDD stepped up. But across 2 games, I think Genji Clid was a monster. Fnatic, after today, it's kind of hard to say, honestly, hard to say. Against TSM, I think Hylissang and Selfmade did most of the legwork. DRX, Pioshik, Pioshik, very good. Chovy did absolutely fucking nothing in their win, let's be honest. Top Esports, I think 369 was an absolute beast. But all in all, let's end the video there. This was the longest summary to date. I don't know if there's something that we should be proud about or not. You missed PSG. As you can see, brother, I'm only referencing to teams that have potential in my eyes coming into the rest of the group. I spoke about some of the other teams, but all in all, I don't think they have like a standout player that is really tying everything together. Thank you so much for watching. Bless you and bless your face. I've tried to end this video many times. But yeah, let's just stop. Let's stop now.